Madam Chairperson, Professor Mustafa, Kinshuk Nath, and friends. I had a very quick look at the papers presented in this seminar. I would take slightly a different vantage point to understand electoral politics and their relation to democracy. First thing I would like the House, or at least to dispel, the fact that electoral politics should not be mistaken to democracy. This is extremely important. If you mistake electoral politics to substance of democracy, it is very likely that we land very serious problems. I would like to remind the House that Hitler was elected in Germany to Parliament. So not that electoral politics always produce democratic culture, democratic outcome. It can also produce authoritarian outcome. So electoral politics intrinsically does not have necessarily the ability to produce only democracy. It is within our own experience that authoritarian regimes also can be generated through electoral politics. I think that caution is extremely important when we debate on electoral politics. My own vantage point of understanding democracy, electoral politics, is I take a political economy view and always try to understand politics through economics. Basically, I am a teacher in political economy in Bangalore National Law School, where I am teaching right now. I teach political economy of Indian state and society. Now, if you look at the way that electoral politics are getting de-linked with the economic processes and how economic processes have overtaken the electoral politics. Most of the agreements, Mustafa Saab sitting here, most of the international agreements do not go through your parliament, right? And it's almost mandatory that when you enter into agreements, they are not to be debated in the parliament. Even now they are demanding they should not be subjected even to judicial. In other words, the locus of policy making shifted from the Indian parliament to global economic agencies is a fact. I think we have to reckon with the whole process. Now, if you look at the link between electoral politics, economic model, and communalization of politics, there is interconnection. There is always an interconnection between production, power, and culture. Many times when we debate in the seminars and focusing on a particular issue or a particular aspect, sometimes it so happens that we look at the thing in a fragment and lose the interconnection. And in the process, perhaps we do not even understand the substance. Noam Chomsky, who has been arguing for the last 40-50 years that America is not a democracy. He has been continuously telling American people that you are not a democracy. His book way back in 1969-70, Political Economy of Human Rights, Washington Connection with Third World Fascism, that's the title of 2 volumes. What the title of the volume? Political Economy of Human Rights, Washington Connection with Third World Fascism. And how America promotes fascism all over the world. By blow account, he has written in his 2 volumes, which I was using when I was teaching human rights. He also has written the famous book, everybody is aware, in Manufacturing Consent. In a liberal democracy, it is believed that the individual consent is necessary for governance. That's the beauty of liberal democracy, that I consent for the governance. And I think Professor Mustafa was starting a choice. It's a choice. Choice is considered to be freedom. Right? Even in law, my law students in Bangalore Law School, when I said we should have a common school where all children, irrespective of parental income, should go to the same school, that's one way of strengthening democracy. They were up in arms. And all of them started saying, how do you compel me to go to a common school? I should have a choice. And if we do not have a choice, we don't have freedom. So the freedom is always understood in terms of the choice. But then, what Chomsky has been arguing is consent can be manufactured. I think previous session, I think with Naksa was presiding, previous session, most of the people coming from the world of journalism were trying to argue how the consent is being manufactured. It's not a choice that I make consciously, but my choice is determined by media, by information, and Sir was talking of post-truth. Lying, art of lying, right? How to tell lies. Right? In the process, why do they tell lies? Why misinformation is produced? That is to mislead your choice. If you have to make a choice based on a rightful information, right? If you have a full information, then you can make a right choice. But your information itself is wrong. And Sangh Parivar, I dare to say, is built on spreading the rumors. In fact, that's one art through which they have been strengthening themselves. Whether it is the Ganesh drinking the milk, or whether it is the Gujarat model of development, or Skylab is falling, or whether Hyderabad city was getting submerged. I was teaching in an evening college in 1970. There was a rumor that entire Hyderabad was getting submerged. Lakhs of people were running Hyderabad. Lakhs of people, believe. Whole Hyderabad was running. Within no time the information was spread. Ganesh drinking the milk. That how can an idol drink the milk? Nobody asked the question. People in lakhs started going, and one of the newspapers woke me up midnight, 1 o'clock, to ask me that Ganesh in America also is drinking the milk. How do we react? I just can't understand. Gujarat model of development. People started believing honey and milk is flowing in Gujarat. And the whole 2014 elections was completely based on this false notion that Gujarat model of development and things are happening, miracles have happened. This misinformation, what Noam Chomsky would say, is consent to manufacturing consent. So democracy founded on misinformation or false information or fraud, right, is also a factor that has to be taken as a part of the analysis when you analyze the whole thing. That's why what Chomsky was arguing is America is a formal democracy but not a substantive democracy. Substantive democracy is the one where people have a voice. People have not only at the time of elections, but between election and election, right, continuously popular public opinion, right, is expressed, is articulated, right, it works as a pressure, and people respond to the policy choices. It's a continuous dialogue between the people and the rulers. But once you elect somebody, it doesn't mean that you have abdicated your entire sovereign power and you have completely empowered the ruler. No. Then democracy is in danger. Democracy is in danger if the people think that after voting, right, their responsibility or their job is over, and for 5 years you wait to again make a choice. I think that democracy will not survive. Democracy is an active, vigilant, right, vibrant participation of the people in the governance. If there is a wrong choice, then I have an obligation, I have a responsibility as a citizen to respond, to tell that what are the consequences, implications. Now, if you look at the entire process of public opinion building in the country, people are always at the receiving end. It's something like a cricket. They are playing, the players are playing. There's an umpire called Judiciary. And we are all spectators. Democracy is not a cricket game. Everybody is a player. You don't have two teams and play. Everybody is a player. Right? You have to be active participant in governance process. Now therefore, people being marginalized, and certain sections of the society getting elected, and they decide on our behalf, and of course after 5 years you will have a choice to reject them, to elect them. People have been rejecting party after party. But what is that they can do if all the political parties, in terms of the economic ideology, in terms of policy choices, if they have a consensus on the model of development, what is the choice left to be? I think one of the major tragedies today in Indian electoral politics or Indian democracy, almost all political parties, including the Marxist parties, have a consensus on the neoliberal model of development. I am yet to see a political party which says that the neoliberal model of development, now and the left party speak, but what is the alternative you are presenting? You are in power in West Bengal, you are in power in Kerala. What is the alternative you have offered? Education, health, public welfare, choice, distribution. Now therefore, if you have to have a vibrant democracy, right, if the political parties have a consensus on the model of development, what is that they are fighting for? What is that you are fighting in elections? Ideologies, matter, because ideology is a worldview, ideology is an approach, is a method of solving the problems of society. If you have poverty, if you have inequalities, you have distributive injustice, then one political party says, if you elect me, this is the policy choice. And people have to make a choice. But in the electoral politics, what are the choices now they are offering in terms of the model of development? Is any political party talking in terms of distributive justice? Is any political party talking distribution of wealth of this country? Is any political party talking of the participatory democracy? Right? Any political party of that kind. And in the process what has happened, that elections after elections are being held, but if you look at the economic structure of the society, while the Article 38, 39, with due respect sir, you are sitting here and I am quoting the articles, Article 38 and 39, what did they promise? Article 38 says reducing inequalities in income, status, opportunities, facilities. What does Article 39 say? Means of production should not be monopolized and wealth of the country should not work with the detriment of the common good of the people. What happened to this mandate? Which political party now is committed to this mandate? And look at what has happened to the economic structure. If you look at the economic structure, today 100 corporate houses are only 49 lakh crores of the wealth. And 1% of the people, according to Oxfam study, 73% of the wealth. Now 60 crores of people in agriculture get 11.5% of the GDP. 60 crores. And 1% of the people have almost 50%. Now according to Oxfam study, 73% of the wealth of the nation. This is the structure of economy. Now through electoral politics, if you would like to look at a distributive justice, more equitable, more egalitarian society, then how are you going to realize an egalitarian society when the political parties have same consensus on the model of development? I think that is the challenge. One of the greatest challenges of political scientists is to raise a fundamental question that if the electoral politics do not lead to the distributive justice, if no political party stands by that, and constitutional mandate has been completely abdicated, then how are you going to analyze the electoral politics and its relation to democracy? Whether electoral politics deepen democracy or trivialize democracy. And electoral politics can deepen democracy provided they are committed to distributive justice, where a substantial democracy can be realized. But if they are not committed to justice and freedom, because both of them go together, then what happens is they trivialize the politics. Otherwise, I can't just imagine Prime Minister of a country, 120, 130 crores people, telling in Gujarat election that former Prime Minister is giving a supari to Pakistan to kill him. He's completely trivializing politics. It is total trivialization of politics. Prime Minister of India saying, I can understand some street politicians saying that. Now, why politics have been so trivialized? Trivialization of politics is when politics are alienated from justice and freedom debate, then the whole discourse changes. Discourse becomes trivial. And in the process, the people who take politics seriously, election seriously, are terribly upset. I was completely disturbed. How can tyrants of a country talk like this, saying that former Prime Minister, Vice President of India, giving a supari to a Pakistani person to kill the Prime Minister? How can this happen? Even assuming if it is true, no Prime Minister would say that. What would the rest of the world think? What will be your image? No, they are not bothered. They are not bothered because their politics are not serious politics. They are trivial politics. Now in the process what has happened, that as we deviated from the model of development, that we have accepted Nehruvian model of development, whatever might be Nehru's other failing Kinshuk Nagwaji were telling of how Nehru also had his own loopholes and all that, taking the Nehruvian model of politics and Mrs. Gandhi talking of Garibi Hatao and certain measures she was trying to see. But 1983 marks an important shift in the economic policy of India. 83 we went to the international agencies for borrowing, and when the World Bank loan came, when we started borrowing, right, our policy shift has taken place. An important shift because it came with conditionalities. The whole loan came with conditionalities. And as the 1983 loan opening the market, opening the complete economy to the foreign capital, Bharatiya Janasangh Party has 2 seats. 91, the Janasangh Party becomes stronger, and by the time 2014, Janasangh Party is in power. And I, as a political economist, see an interconnection between the model of development and the rise of the Janasangh Party. Because if politics are not dealing with substantial issues of economic distribution of the wealth of the country, then politics of this country have been shifted from the economic terrain to cultural terrain. And rise of identity politics can also be linked with this, and rise of the role of religion in politics can also be linked to this. And the politics have shifted now, whether it is Ram Janmabhoomi, whether it is the Triple Talaq, or whether it is the Ghar Wapsi, whether it is the cow, all these issues are cultural. They are not dealing with any distributive, processes. They have nothing to do with the distribution. Whether Ram Mandir is connected or not, constructed or not, is a cultural issue. Mustafa Ji was telling that religion is a private affair. Yes, in a secular country, in a democracy where electoral politics are supposed to be secular. And if you are a secular, then why religion has become such an important, rhetoric? Why, say the whole religion is coming into politics? Because today, there is nothing to debate. If Rahul Gandhi has gone to a temple, Rahul Gandhi does not have an alternative model to present. And after all, BJP is running faster than Manmohan Singh, that's all. Same model of development. BJP talks of nationalism. It talks of, the patriotism. And all of us are considered anti-national. For a simple reason that you invite 100% investment in defense production, and you talk of nationalism and patriotism. You open the foreign capital, you go and say that ask everybody to come and invest in your country, and then you talk of nationalism. What is nationalism? What is nation state, sir? You know that how the nation state came. The whole concept of nation state is the resources located in a physical territory called the nation state belong to the people, right? And they complete sovereign power of the people on the resources, and people decide their own destiny. This is nationalism. If you open your market to foreign capital and they come and take away the resources of your nation right in front of you, and then you are talking nationalism, what is nationalism left? Except cultural nationalism. Where is economic nationalism? Where is your political sovereignty? Where is your economic sovereignty? Except talking of the culture, both counts which are much more important for the future of a nation, that in terms of your sovereignty and in terms of economic independence. If these two things are compromised with, and if you are left with culture, then I think politics have become essentially cultural. In the last session, they were talking the minorities, how the minorities are marginalized. It's not only question of minorities. Today I am as much afraid of the Sangha Parivar as a minority man. They have as much of contempt and anger against me as against a minority man. Maybe I am born a Hindu, but they don't care. They don't care. You have to agree with them. That's very important. It's not a question of minorities. You have to agree with them. Why did they kill Gauri Lankesh? Why did they kill Kalburgi? Sahitya Academy, former Vice Chancellor, not a Maoist, not a minority. Why did they kill them? So you have to ask this question. When minorities in this country are feeling insecure, please remember, it's not only minorities are insecure. Majority are insecure. It's not the minority. OBCs, the Dalits. What happened to Una? It's not Muslim. When you go and how Dalits have been killed. So therefore, the politics are now the politics of hatred. The politics shifted from a creative politics of solving the problem. And politics is, to me, I am a student of political science. How do I define politics? Politics is the collective effort of a society to solve the problems of the people. The problem which an individual cannot solve as an isolated individual joins others in solving the problem. That's what is called politics. It's a science of analyzing the problem and art of solving the problems of society. That's the politics, definition of politics. Politics is the most creative lifeblood of a society, most creative activity, because all of us together solve the problems. But God, as the economic power is concentrated, and if the wealth of the nation is concentrated in the hands of 1% of the people, automatically power has to be concentrated. There is no other logic. Power has to be concentrated. And concentration of power and concentration of economy, they go together. Then what is left for the people is culture. Religion, God, that, this and all that. And that's how the whole thing is operating. That's how it's operating. Please understand that. And in that process you have to understand electoral politics. You have to look at your electoral politics in the framework of the power and economy becoming concentrated. You have shifted politics to cultural terrain. Identity politics. Identity politics have a progressive, it has a progressive content. The most oppressed man asserting his own or her own identity is important. But identity politics have very serious limitations. Identity politics, if they cannot transcend their identity, and if they do not join other oppressed identities, which many people are pleading that minorities in this country, Muslims in this country have to join the other sections of the society. Iqbalji was suggesting this. Iqbal sahab ne कह रहा था कि भाई हम अकेले नहीं हम तो we have to join the other oppressed sections of the society. Why did he suggest that? Because in the identity politics, while you assert your identity, but at the same time, if you get locked up in the identity, then there is no way you can develop, you can transcend and develop a linkage with other identities. And identities fragment the polity. And then the communal politics can easily use. If you have an identity politics as a caste, they brought Hindu identity, meta identity imposed on the other identities. And identity politics are not alien, because if I am identifying myself with one identity, then Hindu identity comes and they superimpose Hindu identity on me. And that's how the identity politics operate. Identity politics needs an adversary. Once they talk of anti-Muslim, many of us thought RSS is anti-Muslim. No. In fact, RSS clearly defined there are two enemies to the country. One is communists, other is Muslims. That's the first definition of the RSS. Communists and Muslims, not Muslims alone. Why communists? Even if you are a Hindu. You understand? Now, in other words, they, in fact, when one of the TV channels, I was arguing, he got a Padma Shri award also. I am so surprised that he started arguing Muslims are. First thing, I knew that he would argue on Muslims in a very, contemptuous way. So I said, so and so, would you first agree that Muslim is a human being? Before we start debate, I asked him, would you agree that Muslim is a human being? He said, Muslims and communists are not human beings. This is what he said. And on the TV channel. He got Padma Shri award. Our Chaudhary ji. Right? I mean, he was he was from the IT profession, he was a consultant to the government. He was supposed to be an engineer. But this is what he says. So therefore, the entire discourse that we have to understand, what I'm saying is, in any debate on electoral politics, that debate cannot be devoid of the democracy. And democracy cannot be devoid of the question of freedom, justice and equality. You see, unless you have that a systemic way of looking at things, we may end up analyzing one part of the story, forgetting the interconnection. That's all what I am trying to say. Since it is supposed to be valedictory, but Afraz very rightly said, every valedictory address is the beginning of an next seminar. It is the beginning of an next seminar. Very rightly put it. Because these observations become the base for holding another seminar as to how to look into the aspect which were missing in one seminar. That's how seminar after seminars are conducted. But since we do not have much of time, I would sum up saying that if you have to see the connection between production, power and culture and see the institutions, now what is happening is that not only electoral politics are trivialized, institutions are being subverted. It's a part of the destruction of democracy. Subversion of institutions, particularly having been university, I feel so sad. My university, Usman University, has been ruined because for 20 years they have no recruitment, no faculty, 800 vacancies, no support, no budgetary support, no money for maintenance of institution. I go back to my university, which was top 5 or 6 university when I was a student. Now it's nowhere. Now where I taught in University of Hyderabad for 2.5 decades, I was proud of my university. I go back to see very sad things happening on my campus. Why University of Hyderabad today is being subverted? Jawaharlal Nehru University, one of the topmost, highly rated university, even under the NAC. Why Jawaharlal Nehru University is being destroyed? Please ask this question. Why they are destroyed? Institution, Election Commission, UPS. Now think of any institution that there is a Reserve Bank of India. Now nobody ever disrespect, but for the first time Governor of Reserve Bank was heckled in West Bengal. First time. And why institutions are being destroyed? The institutions matter in a democracy. Because the power, instead of getting concentrated or not allowing power is distributed across the institution. That's a sovereign power. They can check even the Prime Minister. They see, the Supreme Court, remove Mrs. Gandhi, who was the most powerful. Allahabad High Court gave a judgment against Mrs. Gandhi. That is the democracy. Democracy is now going against most powerful fellows if they go wrong. But say, you look at the Judiciary Crisis, what happened? Look at Reserve Bank, look at the universities, look at federal system, look at the GST. Now in other words, institutions are also being subverted. Subversion of institution is a larger part of the neoliberal model of development. That's what Stiglitz has written. Stiglitz in his work has written that when neoliberal model enters, it subverts the institutions, particularly banking system, for example. Now for the last 1 week, we are debating 11,000 crores scandal, and now they are Fiki saying, please privatize the banks. As if the private banks are safer than a public bank. Discourse has changed. So subversion of institutions. Then what is the remedy? Afraz, by introducing me, said I am not only an academic, I am a bit of an activist. In fact, most of my analysis I derive from what I have been doing in the civil rights movement than what I was doing in the University of Hyderabad. Because you have to continuously be on your guard. And any democracy, vibrant democracy, is that while elections, I am not saying completely, totally you dismiss elections. Yes, electoral politics are there. It's one of the processes. In the evolution of democracy, it's an important development. It's an important development. But then that's not substantive democracy. In the evolution of the democracy, you have to have not only electoral politics, vibrant institutions, but continuous social movements. People have to be on a move. The test for a democracy is at a given point of time, how many movements are going on in the society where people are organizing themselves, asking for solution of the problems, putting pressure on the system, people's pressure. And if there are continuous vibrant social movement, environmental movement, be it a right to information movement, whatever might be the movements, but the movements define the quality of democracy, particularly in a transitional societies. And therefore, I think the alternative left to the people of India is the secular movement, respecting the religion, respecting minorities, standing by them. The movements, I still remember when Babri Masjid was dismantled, I went to Bhorgir to give a lecture on secularism. When I spoke on secularism, it's a great experience that one of the Muslims sitting in the audience with a dad and all that, he came and with a crying in here, he had tears in hand, he hugged me and he dragged me to his house for lunch. He said, "Sahab, abhi hum Hindustan mein reh sakte." I said, "Where will you go? Why do you go? We are all here." And why? Who asked you to go? And he was so, the Babri Masjid was dismantled, he felt so frightened. It's not demolition of the mosque, it was the demolition of all social relations in the country. Our network was demolished. Trust in each other was lost. And that was such a moving experience for me that somebody felt in Bhorgir that he may have to leave the country. People have to stand by them. That is where a secular movement, a movement for secular values, protecting minorities, Dalit movement, OBC's movement, women's movement, the movements in the society tell the system that we are all here, we are watching. And that watchful eye of the people is the safest protection of democracy. That's the wall, it's not a safety wall. So you have electoral politics, but while analyzing electoral politics, you have to bring in social movements. You have to bring institutional vibrance. You have to bring the total economic model of development. Then economic inequalities, in the growing inequalities in the society, how power is distributed. I think in a very systemic way, political economy is one of the methodological, at least, a tool that helps us in connecting things. And since I always look at the election from a political economy point of view, when Afraz asked it, I thought I will bring this particular viewpoint to the House, saying that how to connect things and how to understand things. As Marx put it, that what is obvious coincides with the essence of things, knowledge is superfluous. The essence is much more complex. The obvious, what is apparent is not the reality. What is obvious has to be connected with the essence of politics. And connecting the obvious and the essence is the function of seminars, function of knowledge. Right? And that's where perhaps academics and activists, when they join together, when they analyze, they understand that knowledge that we acquire through the seminars helps us in playing our own responsible role in protecting democracy, promoting democracy, spreading democracy, and creating a more humane, more egalitarian, more participative, more equitable, more free society. And I think a university has that important role to play. I am so happy that Afraz thought of conducting election at a very crucial time. And this debate, as what I heard, what has been happening in the last 2 days, has been a very rewarding experience. I congratulate the organizer for organizing this seminar. Hope you will organize more seminars. We can take up more serious issues to debate. Thank you very much.
It is indeed a moving experience. And when there is a pin drop silence, you can understand the seriousness of the discourse. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Now it's time for the presidential remark. I invite the chairperson of today's valedictory session, Professor Shaida, to share her thoughts.